The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Windsor Castle as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her mirror adjusting the delicate pearl necklace that had belonged to Princess Diana. Today was different from any other royal engagement. She had attended in her 13 years as part of the royal family. The weight of tradition pressed upon her shoulders, yet something stirred within her heart that urged her toward an unprecedented decision. Kate had always been known for her grace and composure, but those close to her recognized a deeper quality that set her apart from previous generations of royals. She possessed an intuitive understanding of human connection that transcended protocol and ceremony. This morning, as she prepared for what would become one of the most significant royal events of the year, she felt an unusual sense of anticipation, mixed with nervous energy. The occasion was the annual Commonwealth service at Westminster Abbey, where representatives from 54 nations would gather to celebrate their shared heritage and values. Queen Elizabeth II, now in her late 90s, would be attending what many suspected might be her final Commonwealth service. The significance of this moment was not lost on Kate, who had developed a profound respect and genuine affection for her grandmother-in-law over the years. As Kate's lady-in-waiting helped her into the elegant navy blue coat dress she had chosen for the occasion, memories flooded back to her first meeting with the Queen years ago. She remembered how intimidated she had felt, how carefully she had practiced her curtsy, and how the Queen's warm smile had immediately put her at ease. That smile had been the beginning of an unexpected bond between the young woman from Berkshire and the most famous monarch in the world. Kate's upbringing had been markedly different from that of previous royal brides. Her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, had built their party supply business from the ground up, instilling in their children the values of hard work, humility, and genuine care for others. These qualities had not gone unnoticed by the Queen, who had watched Kate navigate her royal duties with increasing confidence and natural warmth. The relationship between Kate and Queen Elizabeth had evolved slowly but meaningfully over the years. What began as formal interactions guided by strict protocol had gradually developed into something more personal. The Queen had observed Kate's dedication to her royal duties, her natural way with children, and her ability to connect with people from all walks of life. More importantly, she had witnessed Kate's unwavering support for Prince William and her seamless integration into the complex world of royal responsibility. Kate often reflected on the advice the Queen had given her during private family gatherings. At Balmoral Castle, the Queen had shared stories of her own early years as a young royal, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned about duty, service, and maintaining dignity under constant public scrutiny. These conversations had shaped Kate's understanding of her role and deepened her appreciation for the woman who had dedicated her entire life to serving others. As Kate applied her final touches of makeup, she thought about the thousands of people who would be watching today's service, both in person and around the world. The Commonwealth service was always a grand affair, filled with pageantry, music, and carefully choreographed moments that had been refined over decades of tradition. Every gesture, every movement, every interaction was planned and rehearsed to ensure the dignity and solemnity of the occasion. However, something was different about Kate's preparation this morning. While she understood and respected the importance of protocol, she felt compelled by a deeper instinct that urged her to act from the heart rather than from the rule book. The idea had been forming in her mind for weeks, growing stronger each day as she contemplated the significance of this particular service and what it might mean for the Queen personally. Kate's security detail was already assembled downstairs, and her schedule was precisely timed to ensure her arrival at Westminster Abbey at exactly the right moment. The logistics of royal movements were always complex, involving multiple agencies and countless details that had to be coordinated perfectly. Yet as Kate took one final look in the mirror, she knew that no amount of planning could have prepared anyone for what she was contemplating. The drive through London's streets toward Westminster Abbey gave Kate time to reflect on her journey from a relatively ordinary young woman to one of the most recognized faces in the world. She thought about her three children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, and how they were growing up in a world where their every move would be scrutinized and analyzed. She hoped that her actions today would demonstrate, too, them the importance of acting with authenticity and genuine feeling, even within the constraints of royal duty. As the car approached the historic abbey, Kate could see the crowds gathering behind the barriers, the media crews setting up their equipment, and the dignitaries beginning to arrive for the service. The familiar butterflies began to flutter in her stomach, not because she was nervous about the public attention, but because she was about to make a choice that could potentially challenge decades of established royal protocol. The ancient stones of Westminster Abbey seemed to hold their breath as the royal family gathered for the Commonwealth service. Kate entered through the great west door, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor that had witnessed centuries of coronations, weddings, and state occasions. The Abbey was filled with dignitaries, Commonwealth representatives, and members of the public who had been invited to witness this celebration of unity and shared values. As Kate made her way to the designated royal seating area, she exchanged polite nods with familiar faces among the congregation. High commissioners, prime ministers, and cultural leaders from across the Commonwealth had traveled from every corner of the globe to be present for this annual gathering. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, though most attendees had no idea they were about to witness a moment that would be discussed and analyzed for years to come. Queen Elizabeth II arrived precisely on schedule, moving with the measured steps that had become more careful in recent years, but still carrying herself with the unmistakable dignity that had defined her 7-decade reign. Kate watched her grandmother-in-law with deep admiration, noting how the Queen's presence immediately transformed the atmosphere in the Abbey. Even at her advanced age, Queen Elizabeth possessed an almost magical ability to command attention and respect simply by entering a room. The service began with traditional hymns that echoed through the Gothic arches, their melodies intertwining with the collective voices of hundreds of worshippers. Kate joined in the familiar songs, but her attention kept drifting to the Queen, who sat with perfect posture despite the length of the ceremony. Kate had attended numerous services alongside Queen Elizabeth over the years, and she had always been struck by the monarch's unwavering focus and apparent stamina during even the longest royal engagements. During the readings and prayers that celebrated the diversity and unity of the Commonwealth nations, Kate found herself thinking about the millions of people around the world who looked to the Queen as a symbol of stability and continuity. She reflected on the countless letters the Queen received from ordinary citizens who had been touched by her presence during royal visits, or who simply wanted to share their personal milestones with someone they considered a grandmother figure, to the entire Commonwealth. The Archbishop of Canterbury delivered a sermon about service, sacrifice, and the bonds that unite people across cultural and geographical boundaries. His words resonated deeply with Kate, who had increasingly understood her own role as an opportunity to bridge different worlds and connect with people from all backgrounds. She thought about her recent visits to hospitals, schools, and community centers, where she had witnessed firsthand the impact that genuine care and attention could have on people's lives. As the service continued, Kate became increasingly aware of the formality that governed every aspect of royal behavior. The careful positioning, the predetermined responses, the precisely timed movements, all of these elements served important purposes in maintaining the dignity and solemnity of state occasions. However, Kate also recognized that sometimes the most meaningful connections occurred when people stepped beyond the boundaries of formal expectation and allowed their authentic selves to shine through. The Queen's own evolution over the decades provided a powerful example of this balance. While she had always maintained the highest standards of royal protocol, Queen Elizabeth had also shown remarkable adaptability and genuine warmth in her interactions with the public. Kate remembered watching footage of the Queen's response to national tragedies, her visits to disaster sites, and her ability to offer comfort through simple gestures that transcended the barriers of protocol. During a particularly moving musical performance by the Commonwealth Youth Choir, Kate noticed how the Queen's face softened as she listened to the young voices singing together in perfect harmony. The children represented the future of the Commonwealth, and their performance embodied the hope and unity that the organization sought to promote. Kate saw in the Queen's expression a mixture of pride, joy, and perhaps a touch of wistfulness as she contemplated the legacy she would eventually leave behind. The moment that had been building in Kate's consciousness for weeks suddenly crystallized into clarity. She understood that true respect and affection could not always be contained within the boundaries of established protocol. Sometimes the most meaningful gestures were those that came from the heart rather than from the handbook of royal procedure. Kate felt a surge of certainty about what she needed to do, even though it would deviate from the expected script of royal behavior. As the service moved toward its conclusion, Kate's pulse quickened. The congregation would soon be standing for the final hymn, followed by the formal recession of the royal family. According to protocol, Kate would walk out in her designated order, maintaining the proper distance and demeanor that had been refined through centuries of royal tradition. However, Kate had decided that this day called for something different, something that would honor not just the institution of monarchy, but the remarkable woman who had devoted her entire life to serving others. The final hymn began to swell through the abbey, and Kate felt the weight of her decision settling upon her shoulders. She knew that her actions in the next few minutes would be captured by dozens of cameras and witnessed by hundreds of people in the abbey, as well as millions more watching the broadcast around the world. More importantly, she knew that her gesture would communicate something deeper than words could express about the genuine affection and respect that existed between generations of the royal family. The final notes of the closing hymn faded into the hallowed silence of Westminster Abbey, and the moment Kate had been preparing herself for arrived with startling suddenness. The congregation began to rustle with the quiet movements of people, preparing to leave while the royal family prepared for their formal recession from the abbey. According to centuries of established protocol, they would exit in order of precedence, maintaining the dignified composure that had become synonymous with royal occasions. Queen Elizabeth rose from her seat with the careful grace that had become more pronounced in recent years, her walking stick providing support as she prepared to make her way toward the great west door. The familiar routine was about to unfold exactly as it had countless times before, with each member of the royal family playing their designated role in a choreographed display of tradition and respect. However, as the Queen began to move slowly toward the aisle, Kate felt an overwhelming surge of emotion that transcended every rule and regulation she had learned about royal behavior. In that moment, she saw not the sovereign who had reigned for 7 decades, but a beloved grandmother figure who had shown her nothing but kindness, guidance, and acceptance since she had joined the royal family. The formal titles and ceremonial roles seemed to fade away, replaced by a profound sense of personal connection and genuine affection. Without hesitation, Kate stepped forward and performed a deep, graceful curtsy that seemed to flow from her very soul. But this was not the brief, protocol-prescribed acknowledgement that would have been expected in such a setting. Instead, Kate held the position for several seconds longer than tradition required, her head bowed in a gesture that communicated profound respect, gratitude, and love that words could never adequately express. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A hush fell over the abbey that was so complete it seemed as though the ancient building itself was holding its breath. Hundreds of eyes focused on Kate as she remained in her deep curtsy, and the cameras that had been prepared to capture a routine royal departure suddenly found themselves documenting something entirely unexpected and deeply moving. Queen Elizabeth, who had been moving slowly toward the exit, paused in her steps. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the monarch stood perfectly still, looking down at her granddaughter-in-law with an expression that revealed the depth of emotion hidden beneath her typically composed exterior. Those closest to the Queen could see tears beginning to form in her eyes, a sight so rare that many of the witnesses would later describe it as one of the most touching moments they had ever observed. The Queen's own reaction spoke volumes about the significance of Kate's gesture. Throughout her long reign, Queen Elizabeth had received countless formal acknowledgments, ceremonial bows, and protocol-prescribed demonstrations of respect. However, Kate's curtsy was different because it came from a place of genuine love rather than obligation. It was a spontaneous expression of the deep, personal relationship that had developed between two women from very different backgrounds who had found common ground in their shared commitment to service and family. Prince William, standing nearby, watched the exchange with a mixture of pride and amazement. He knew better than anyone the courage it had taken for Kate to break from established protocol in such a public setting. He also understood the significance of what he was witnessing, a moment of authentic human connection that transcended the formalities of royal life and touched something fundamental about the bonds that truly matter between people. The other members of the royal family were equally moved by Kate's gesture. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach to royal duties, was visibly touched by the sincerity of the moment. Prince Charles, who would one day inherit the throne that his mother had carried with such dignity, recognized the profound respect that Kate was showing not just to the Queen personally, but to the institution of monarchy itself. The congregation, initially surprised by the deviation from expected protocol, gradually began to understand that they were witnessing something special. Many of them had attended numerous royal events over the years, but this moment felt different. It was raw, authentic, and deeply human in a way that formal ceremonies rarely achieved. The spontaneous nature of Kate's gesture made it all the more powerful, demonstrating that even within the structured world of royal protocol, there was room for genuine emotion and personal expression. As Kate finally rose from her curtsy, the Queen reached out and gently touched her arm, a gesture that was itself unusual in such a formal setting. The brief contact between the two women communicated more than any speech or formal statement could have conveyed. It was an acknowledgement of the love and respect that existed between them, and a recognition of the special bond that had developed over years of shared experiences and mutual support. The moment continued to resonate throughout the Abbey as the royal family completed their recession. Whispered conversations began among the congregation as people tried to process what they had just witnessed. Many recognized that they had been present for something extraordinary, a spontaneous display of genuine affection that had transformed a routine royal event into something memorable and deeply meaningful. News of Kate's unprecedented curtsy spread through the assembled congregation like ripples across still water. Royal correspondents who had covered hundreds of ceremonial events immediately recognized that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Their practiced eyes, trained to notice even the smallest deviations from protocol, understood that Kate's gesture represented far more than a simple breach of etiquette. It was a profound statement about love, respect, and the human connections that exist beneath the formal structures of monarchy. Within minutes of the service's conclusion, photographers were reviewing their images with excitement and disbelief. The sequence of photographs capturing Kate's deep curtsy and the Queen's emotional response would soon become some of the most widely circulated royal images in recent memory. The visual narrative was immediately clear to anyone who viewed the pictures. This was not a routine royal interaction, but rather a moment of genuine human connection that transcended the boundaries of protocol and ceremony. Social media platforms began buzzing with reactions as attendees and viewers shared their observations about what they had witnessed. The initial posts were tentative, as people tried to process the significance of what they had seen. However, as more details emerged and additional photographs became available, the response grew increasingly enthusiastic. People from around the world began expressing their admiration for Kate's courage in following her heart, rather than simply adhering to established protocol. Royal experts and commentators found themselves in the unique position of analyzing a gesture that was simultaneously revolutionary and deeply traditional. Kate had broken protocol by extending her curtsy beyond the prescribed duration and timing, yet her action embodied the very essence of what royal ceremonies were meant to represent: genuine respect, honor, and recognition of service and sacrifice. The paradox created fascinating discussions about the nature of tradition and the role of authentic emotion within formal institutions. Back at the palace, senior members of the royal household were engaged in hushed conversations about the implications of Kate's action. Protocol officers who had spent decades ensuring that every royal engagement proceeded according to established guidelines were initially concerned about the precedent that had been set. However, as they witnessed the overwhelmingly positive public response, even the most traditional voices began to acknowledge that Kate's gesture had achieved something remarkable. The Queen herself seemed transformed by the experience. Those close to her noticed a lightness in her demeanor that had not been present for months. The genuine emotion she had displayed in the Abbey represented a rare glimpse behind the carefully maintained public facade that had defined her reign. Palace staff whispered among themselves about the tears they had seen in the monarch's eyes, recognizing that such displays of emotion were extraordinarily uncommon for someone who had spent 7 decades maintaining perfect public composure. Prince William found himself fielding calls from various royal officials who wanted to understand the background behind Kate's decision. He explained that his wife had not consulted anyone before making her gesture, emphasizing that it had been a completely spontaneous expression of her genuine feelings. This information only served to enhance the public's appreciation for Kate's action, as it demonstrated the authenticity and sincerity that had motivated her decision. International media outlets picked up the story with unprecedented enthusiasm. Royal correspondents from around the world recognized that Kate's curtsy represented a significant moment in the evolution of the modern monarchy. Commentary pieces began appearing in major newspapers and magazines, analyzing the gesture from multiple perspectives and exploring its implications for the future of royal protocol and public engagement. The reaction from Commonwealth nations was particularly noteworthy. Representatives who had attended the service began sharing their own observations about the moment, many expressing how moved they had been by Kate's demonstration of respect and affection. The gesture resonated strongly in cultures where showing respect to elders and honoring family relationships were deeply valued traditions, creating a powerful connection between Kate's action and the shared values of the Commonwealth community. Behind the scenes at Buckingham Palace, a quiet revolution was beginning to take shape. Younger members of the royal staff, many of whom had long admired Kate's natural approach to her royal duties, saw her gesture as validation of their belief that authentic human connection could coexist with traditional formality. Conversations began emerging about ways to maintain the dignity and respect that protocol was designed to protect, while also creating space for genuine emotional expression. The Queen's private secretary, who had served the monarch for over 2 decades, observed that he had never seen Queen Elizabeth so visibly moved by a gesture from another member of the royal family. In his daily briefings with the monarch, he noted a renewed energy and enthusiasm that seemed directly connected to the profound respect Kate had demonstrated. The Queen's own comments about the incident, though kept strictly private, revealed the deep appreciation she felt for Kate's courage in following her instincts. As the day progressed, it became increasingly clear that Kate's spontaneous curtsy had achieved something that years of carefully planned public relations campaigns had not been able to accomplish. It had humanized the royal family in a way that felt authentic and meaningful, demonstrating that beneath the crowns and titles were real people with genuine emotions and deep personal connections. The gesture had reminded the world that even within the most formal institutions there was room for love, respect, and heartfelt expression. The days following Kate's remarkable gesture brought an avalanche of global attention that surprised even the most experienced royal watchers. Television networks around the world replayed the footage countless times, with commentators analyzing every aspect of the moment from multiple angles. The image of Kate in her deep, heartfelt curtsy, combined with the Queen's visible emotional response, became an iconic representation of respect, love, and the evolution of modern monarchy. Letters began pouring into Buckingham Palace at an unprecedented rate. People from every corner of the Commonwealth and beyond felt compelled to share their reactions to what they had witnessed. Elderly citizens wrote about how Kate's gesture reminded them of the respect they had been taught to show their own grandparents. Young people expressed admiration for Kate's courage in breaking from tradition to follow her heart. Mothers and daughters shared stories about their own family relationships and how Kate's action had inspired them to express their love more openly. The international press coverage continued to grow rather than diminish, with major publications commissioning in-depth analyses of the gesture and its broader implications. Royal biographers began incorporating the moment into their ongoing narratives about the modernization of the monarchy, while cultural commentators explored what Kate's action revealed about changing attitudes toward tradition, protocol, and authentic expression in public life. Queen Elizabeth, meanwhile, was experiencing a personal renaissance that was evident to everyone around her. The visible joy and energy she displayed in the days following the Commonwealth service created a ripple effect throughout the palace. Staff members who had worked with the Queen for decades remarked on the spring in her step and the brightness in her eyes that seemed directly connected to Kate's gesture of love and respect. The Queen's response to the flood of positive mail was telling. Rather than delegating the task to her private secretaries, as was typical for such correspondence, she insisted on personally reviewing many of the letters that had arrived. She was particularly moved by messages from grandchildren around the world who wrote about how Kate's curtsy had inspired them to show more appreciation for their own elderly relatives. These letters seemed to reinforce the Queen's understanding that Kate's gesture had touched something universal about family relationships and intergenerational respect. Royal protocol experts found themselves in the unusual position of defending a breach of traditional etiquette. Leading authorities on royal procedure acknowledged that while Kate's extended curtsy had technically violated established guidelines, it had achieved something far more important than mere compliance with rules. The gesture had demonstrated the underlying principles that protocol was designed to protect: respect, honor, and recognition of service, in a way that was more powerful than any perfectly executed ceremonial routine. Prince William and Kate's children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, became inadvertent beneficiaries of their mother's bold decision. The Queen's heightened spirits translated into more relaxed and joyful interactions with her great-grandchildren during family gatherings. Palace staff noticed that the Queen seemed more inclined to engage in spontaneous play and conversation with the young princes and princess, as if Kate's authentic gesture had reminded her of the importance of genuine connection over formal interaction. The response from other European royal families was equally remarkable. Representatives from monarchies across Europe reached out to express their admiration for Kate's gesture and its positive impact on public perception of royal institutions. Several younger members of European royal families privately acknowledged that Kate's courage in following her instincts had inspired them to consider their own approaches to balancing tradition with authentic expression. Behind the scenes at Buckingham Palace, a gradual shift in attitude was becoming apparent among staff members at every level. Conversations began emerging about ways to preserve the dignity and respect that protocol was designed to ensure, while also creating space for the kind of genuine human moments that had made Kate's curtsy so powerful. Senior officials, who had initially been concerned about the precedent, began to recognize that authentic emotion and respect for tradition were not mutually exclusive. The impact extended beyond the immediate royal circle to influence public engagement with the monarchy more broadly. Polling data showed a significant increase in positive sentiment toward the royal family, with Kate's gesture being cited as a primary factor in improved public opinion. The moment had succeeded in humanizing the institution in a way that felt both genuine and respectful, creating a template for how modern royals might navigate the balance between tradition and authenticity. Educational institutions began incorporating analysis of Kate's gesture into discussions about leadership, respect, and the courage required to act authentically in formal settings. Business schools examined the moment as a case study in authentic leadership and the power of genuine human connection to transform institutional cultures. The gesture had transcended its royal context to become a broader symbol of the importance of following one's heart while maintaining respect for established traditions. As the weeks passed, it became increasingly clear that Kate's spontaneous curtsy had created a lasting legacy that extended far beyond a single ceremonial moment. The gesture had opened a conversation about the role of authentic emotion in public life, the nature of true respect, and the ways in which individual actions could honor both personal relationships and institutional traditions. Most importantly, it had demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful statements were made not through words, but through simple acts of genuine love and respect. Months after the Commonwealth service, Kate's gesture continued to resonate through the corridors of power and the hearts of people around the world. What had begun as a spontaneous moment of authentic emotion had evolved into something much larger, a symbol of how genuine human connection could transform even the most formal institutions. The image of Kate's deep curtsy and the Queen's tearful response had become one of the most beloved royal photographs in modern history, displayed in homes and offices across the Commonwealth as a reminder of the power of sincere respect and love. The long-term impact on Queen Elizabeth was perhaps the most profound and beautiful consequence of Kate's decision. In the months following the service, those closest to the Queen observed a remarkable transformation in her approach to both public and private engagements. She seemed more willing to let her guard down, to show genuine emotion, and to connect with people on a more personal level. The rigid formality that had characterized much of her later reign began to soften, replaced by a warmth that felt both regal and wonderfully human. During private family gatherings at Windsor Castle and Balmoral, the Queen often referenced Kate's curtsy as a turning point in her understanding of how authentic emotion could enhance rather than diminish the dignity of the monarchy. She spoke with visible pride about her granddaughter-in-law's courage in following her heart, and she began encouraging other family members to trust their instincts when it came to expressing genuine care and connection with the public. The relationship between Kate and Queen Elizabeth deepened significantly in the aftermath of that memorable day. Their private conversations, which had always been marked by mutual respect, took on a new intimacy as the Queen began sharing more personal reflections about her reign, her hopes for the future of the monarchy, and her gratitude for Kate's presence in the family. The Queen often expressed her belief that Kate's natural warmth and authenticity represented exactly what the modern monarchy needed to remain relevant and beloved. Kate herself was transformed by the experience and its aftermath. The overwhelming positive response to her gesture gave her increased confidence in trusting her instincts and following her heart in her royal duties. She began incorporating more spontaneous moments into her public engagements, always maintaining the dignity and respect that her position required, while also allowing space for genuine human connection. Her approach became a model for other royals around the world who were seeking to balance tradition with authenticity. The ripple effects of Kate's curtsy extended far beyond the royal family to influence public attitudes toward respect, tradition, and authentic expression. Schools across the Commonwealth began using the moment as a teaching tool to discuss the importance of showing genuine appreciation for elderly family members and community elders. The gesture sparked conversations in countless homes about the ways families could express love and respect more openly and meaningfully. Professional organizations and leadership institutes incorporated analysis of Kate's decision into their training programs, using the moment to illustrate the power of authentic leadership and the courage required to act from the heart, even in highly structured environments. The gesture became a case study in how individual actions could transform institutional cultures and create lasting positive change. The media coverage, which had initially focused on the protocol-breaking aspects of Kate's curtsy, evolved into broader discussions about the nature of modern monarchy and the role of genuine emotion in public life. Royal correspondents, who had initially been surprised by the departure from tradition, began to recognize that Kate's gesture had achieved something remarkable. It had made the monarchy more accessible and relatable without diminishing its dignity or significance. As the first anniversary of the Commonwealth service approached, preparations began for what would become an annual celebration of Kate's courage and the Queen's gracious response. The moment had created a new tradition within the royal family, with members increasingly feeling free to express their genuine emotions and authentic connections during public engagements. The rigid formality that had once characterized royal events began to incorporate space for heartfelt moments that enhanced rather than undermined the solemnity and significance of ceremonial occasions. Looking back on that transformative day, Kate often reflected on how a single moment of following her heart had created such far-reaching positive change. She had not set out to revolutionize royal protocol or create a lasting legacy. She had simply wanted to express her genuine love and respect for a remarkable woman who had shown her nothing but kindness and acceptance. The fact that her spontaneous gesture had touched so many hearts and inspired so many positive changes only reinforced her belief in the power of authentic emotion and genuine human connection. The story of Kate's curtsy became more than just a royal anecdote. It became a testament to the transformative power of sincere respect, genuine love, and the courage to follow one's heart. In a world often characterized by artificiality and calculated public relations, Kate's moment of authentic emotion had reminded everyone that the most powerful statements were often the simplest ones, made not with words, but with actions that came directly from the heart. The bow that stilled the room had indeed stirred the monarch and marked a historic moment, but more importantly, it had demonstrated that true respect and love could flourish even within the most formal traditions, creating beauty and meaning that would be remembered for generations to come.